Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm going to start off the meeting by reading a small introduction. Welcome to the Richard L. Thompson Lecture Series, where 6 of Thompson's books will be covered chapter by chapter, with a lecture summarizing the contents and highlighting the chapter's essential messages, followed by a discussion section. We are currently covering his third book, Parallels, Ancient Insights into Modern UFO Phenomena, published in 1993. Originally published with the title Alien Identities. In the last session on May 13th, Lilo Ocampo spoke on Chapter 4, UFO Abductions, and Prishni Sutan spoke on Chapter 5, Contactees, Channels, and Communications. Today, we will have a presentation by Dwija Govinda on Chapter 6, Transhuman Contact in Vedic Civilization. Dwija holds 2 PhDs in acoustics and computational mathematics, works in telecommunications at the Scientific and Production Enterprise, and teaches Vedic mathematics and other courses in Kiev Christian Consciousness Academy. Please join us in the 2-week. Oh, yeah, that's all.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Dwija.
Thank you, Shubhama and Krishna, for a kind introduction. So we are starting the part 2 of this very interesting book. The title of the part 2 of Parallels is Vedic Parallels to UFO Phenomena. So chapter 6 is called The Transhuman Contact in Vedic Civilization. So at the beginning of the chapter, Sadaputa Prabhu makes several remarks. First of all, he states that the reports of UFO sightings and contacts have suggested that the human race is being contacted by intelligent beings that are not human, but are surprisingly similar to ourselves. And then he also makes several explanations explaining that they are both similar and aligned to us. So these two contradictions, they're similar and not similar at the same time, and later it will be explained why. So also the author remarks about the difficulties of UFO study, because these guests from outside, so-called, they seem intended to influence human society from a distance without establishing relationships based on clear mutual understanding. So as a result, we have very little tangible evidence that they really exist. The information witnesses have received, this information often seems absurd or contradictory. Yes, this is what we have to admit. But the remark by the author is also that it may that things have not always been this way, because among tribal societies, mystical contacts with higher beings have been standard since time immemorial in different traditions, in particular in the ancient Vedic society of India. So in Vedic culture, in Vedic literature, we find a lot of evidences supporting the facts that there have been contacts with some unearthly beings which, and these have many parallels with the UFO, which is the main idea, of this chapter number 6. So I tried, at least for myself, to formulate the main thesis, the main idea of this chapter. And as for me, it looks like many features of the modern UFO phenomenon can be seen in Vedic accounts of encounters between humans and members of other human-like races. So there are many parallels between reported UFO contacts and different stories or memories which we find in the Vedic literature. So this is the main idea as I have formulated for this chapter. So, and Sadaputa Prabhu Richard Thompson, he also makes a remark that how should we read this chapter? How should a new reader, which has no who did not have much acquaintance with the Vedic scriptures, how he or she should understand this chapter. So he says, suspend judgment and simply try to appreciate the Vedic material as it is. And by Vedic, he means Vedic includes it means Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, of course, Itihasas, Puranas. So there is a line of several similar concepts, several parallels between Vedic account and account of recording of UFO contacts. It includes Vimanas, conception of other worlds, humanoids, etc., and also cosmic hierarchy, and some others. We will briefly discuss each of these points. So the similarities start with Vimanas. Okay, so Vimanas, as presented in Vedas, may be of several kinds. Grossly physical machines, secondly, machines driven by subtle energy, or machines driven by transcendental, non-material energy. And also, it's important to know that the humans of this earth generally didn't manufacture such machines, although they did sometimes acquire them from more technical advanced beings, like Maya Danova, for example, from the lower planets. So, yes, I looked into the dictionary. What Vimana means. It has many interesting meanings, such as devoid or honor, disrespect, etc. But the main meaning is a car or chariot of gods, any mythical, self-moving aerial car, sometimes serving as a seat or a throne, sometimes self-moving and carrying its occupant through the air. So, Vimana, this is Vimana. And typical Vimanas had flight characteristics resembling those reported for the UFOs. And the beings associated with them were said to possess powers similar to those presently ascribed to UFO. So, Staputta Prabhu, I am not giving these accounts here, but he presents several situations where the UFO witnesses have reported the description of UFO flying apparatus, which closely resemble the Vimanas as reported in different Vedic sources. Another parallel is conception of other worlds. Vedas confirm possibility of travel to other worlds, both within material universe and beyond it. So it travels to transcendental realm. The Vedic literature does not use, very important note that Vedic literature does not use geometric terms such as higher dimensions. The travel to other worlds is described functionally in terms of the experiences of the travelers. Thus, it is necessary for the modern reader to deduce from the accounts that this travel involves more than motion through three-dimensional space. What is described in Vedic literature is not it's not a movement through three-dimensional space as we know it. Also, sometimes people say, oh, in Vedas, 64 dimensions are described. Very often I hear this. There are no 64 dimensions, never. In no place of the Vedas or Vedic literature we find 64 dimensions. No, but we have to understand that the different episodes of Itihasas or Puranas, they can be understood only if we assume that these heroes of Vedic scriptures, they are moving through the multidimensional space. Only these can explain the miraculous acts which they perform. Okay, so high-dimensional inhabited realms are understood in Vedic thought to extend in three stages: within the earth, on the earth, and through outer space. So within, on, and through outer space, maybe in middle, or maybe in lower, middle, and higher planetary systems, in other words. So one quote, one of my favorite quotes, I thought it would be appropriate to quote it This is from Vedic cosmography and astronomy. I believe, did we already read this book, or we will just plan to read it chapter by chapter? So there are different, because there are some people do not sometimes find contradictions of what is the Earth globe, what is Bharatavarsha, what is Bhumandala, how are they connected. And in this book, Sadaputta Prabhu says that all these statements can be reconciled if we adopt the idea that the Earth of the Bhagavatam is the disk of Bhumandala, but that only a small portion of this Earth is accessible to the limited senses of the modern human beings. I won't read the whole quote, but what I want to say that in previous times, in previous yugas, people, for example, they have much more advanced power of senses, and they could perceive much more terrestrial, much more advanced terrestrial realms that then are accessible to us. Although these realms still exist, and UFO contacts can be also explained by some migration of different entities from one realm to another. Okay, let's move forward. Humanoids. Humanoids, what is said about humanoids? Well, we know from the Padma Purana that there are, Sadaputta Prabhu didn't say this quote exactly, but I thought these quotes from Srila Prabhupada would be appropriate also here. So there are 400,000 human species. Some of the species, writes Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita 19, Madhya 19:138. Some of these species may exist on one planet and not on another. But in any case, within all the planets of the universe and even in the sun, there are living entities. This is a verdict of the Vedic literatures. In another letter to Pendra, Srila Prabhupada writes, we have information that there are 84 lakhs of species of life. Out of these, 400,000 species are considered human life. Of these 400,000, how many species do we find in our experience, means on this earth? Evidently. So, not many, says Srila Prabhupada, probably less than 1,000. In another occasion, Srila Prabhupada said 100. So, we must conclude that there are hundreds of thousands of higher and lower types of human forms, which we cannot find on this earth. So, and this also, they can be viewed as humanoids, which are human-like entities, which are the presence of which, the contacts with which are reported in UFO literature. So, excuse me. So, UFO accounts often portray humanoids as looking strange or repulsive, like Kimpurushas, inhabitants of Jambudvipa. But some have been described as beautiful, like Gandharvas or Apsaras. So they may look in different ways. The same is also reported about the UFO persons which are trying to contact us, or not trying to contact, but which have been met by the witnesses. So, also about Siddhis. Many of the Vedic humanoid races are said to naturally possess certain powers called Siddhis. Among them, the Siddhis is mental communication, being able to hear, see or hear at great distance, levitation or anti-gravity, anima and mahima, the power to change the size of objects of living bodies without disrupting their structure. Or prapti siddhi, the ability to move objects from one place to another, or to receive or take some object which is located quite far away from the person who wants to take it. Also, other siddhis, they are all these are reported in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The ability to move object directly through the ether without being impeded by gross obstacles. This type of travel is called Manojava. Also, Vashida Siddhi, the power of long-distance hypnotic control. We will also say about it later. Antardana, invisibility. Also, the ability to assume different forms or to generate illusory bodily forms. and finally, the power of entering within another person's body and controlling it. So this is all primary and secondary mystic powers described in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, and more or less in different degree. It is also found in the UFO, in the UFO context. Okay, this is what about humanoids and their powers. Yes, also a remark which makes Adaputta Prabhu typical lifespans of humanoid beings living outside the Earth are in the order of 10,000 years. Yes, which is much higher than the maximum lifespan which we can observe even in the so-called advanced developed countries. Okay, also one little section is dedicated to the concept of the soul, because only the concept of the soul can harmonically and comprehensively describe some experiences which some experience of people which have contact with the UFO. For example, the soul and subtle body are said to transmigrate from one gross body to another, and they can also travel temporarily outside of the gross body. Also, the process of transmigration is regulated by universal laws, and there are humanoid beings involved in controlling this process, like devotees, for example. Also, UFO reports contain many references to the soul, to transmigration, and to out-of-body experiences. Yes. So, contact with UFO sometimes helps some person to experience this, to feel this out-of-body experience, external to the body experience. Another line of similarities is in cosmic hierarchy. Cosmic hierarchy, we know that 14 levels of planetary systems described in the Vedic literature. And what Siddhartha Prabhu says, one idea that often comes up in UFO communications is that there is a law and order within the cosmos. Various order, basically the word cosmos means the order from the Greek. Various confederations of planets are mentioned, and these are often said to follow high authorities who have greatly elevated states of consciousness and live in higher planets or vibrational states. The basic idea of hierarchical universal government is a key element of the Vedic worldview. So we know that Vedic literature describes in detail how this cosmic hierarchy is organized for responsible persons, what kind of life is in different planetary systems, what persons inhabit different levels of cosmic hierarchy according to their previous deeds in accordance with their karma. All this is described in the Vedic literatures. And we hardly can find it in any, I believe, other scriptures of the world's cultural and religious heritage. Although the universe is completely under intelligent control, high-level controllers, such as the devas and great sages, do not generally intervene directly in the lives of subordinate beings, including earthly humans. However, there are beings which are called asuras, or demons, who actively rebel against the cosmic hierarchy and who do sometimes interfere strongly in earthly affairs. Okay, maybe I just thought that those story described in the, I don't know how it's original in English, War of Worlds, maybe by Herbert Wells. Sometimes they interfere strongly in earthly affairs. Okay, and also human origins. Yes, this idea that I was a schoolboy in the 80s, and I remember then in Soviet Union there was a lot of this literature about UFO. It was a very popular topic. It came to the Soviet Union maybe 20 years later than it was originated in the US. and in particular, many theories that we humans here on the Earth are just a not very good result of not very successful experiments of other unearthly humanoids or living entities which live somewhere in the stars, etc. So, according to Vedic viewpoint, we have a very clear explanation. Brahma generated various bodily forms by direct mental action, and generations of descendants were produced from these forms by sexual reproduction. The different humanoid races were all produced in this manner, and thus they are all related by common ancestry, coming up to Brahma, then to Vishnu. Unlike living species in our experience, these beings carried bijas or seeds for many different types of beings. So it wasn't they didn't just make new population by ordinary sexual intercourse, but they had some like these Prajapatis, they carried bijas or seeds for many different types of beings. The Vedic accounts clearly indicate that interbreeding can take place between different humanoid species. In particular, some of the heroes of the Mahabharata were said to be descendants of a human mother and Deva or celestial fathers, for instance. So, and what about the contact, evidence of contact with unearthly civilizations reported in Vedic literature? In the ancient Vedic civilization, contact with various non-human races was on a solid footing. Demigods, sages, forefathers, and mystic spirits, and the chief planetary rulers and their followers, all of them have been worshipped by King Yudhishthira at Rajasuya Yagya. So, and the second part of the chapter is dedicated to the description of several Vedic accounts of close encounter phenomena, which much resembles to UFO reports. And Sadaputa Prabhu writes, there are many parallels between the Vedic view of reality and the picture that emerges from UFO reports. It is possible that Vedic information may have influenced some alleged UFO communications, not otherwise. Not that UFO communications have UFO information have influenced the Vedic information. No, it cannot be in this way. Vedic information may have influenced some UFO communications. So it's called, gives this term, medical term, cryptomnesia. There is a genuine relationship between the experiences of people living in Vedic times and modern experiences involving UFOs. So, and there are several particular stories which he presents. The first is aerial bombardment of Dwaraka by Shalva. So Shalva possessed airplane. I believe it was made by Mayadanova. So mysterious airplane, and it was so extraordinary, Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, that sometimes many airplanes would appear to be in the sky, and sometimes there were apparently none. Sometimes the plane was visible, and sometimes not visible. And the warriors of the Yadu dynasty were puzzled about the whereabouts of the peculiar airplane. Sometimes they would see the airplane on the ground, sometimes flying in the sky, sometimes resting on the peak of a hill, etc. The wonderful airplane flew in the sky like a whirling firebrand. It was not steady even for a moment. And Sadaputa Prabhu also presents several descriptions from the reported UFO communications which which have similarities with this description of the Vimana of wonderful, this terrible and wonderful Vimana of Shalva. The flight characteristics of this airplane resemble those of UFOs in many respects. It also involves persons who exhibit unusual powers and patterns of behavior that are typical of those reported in the UFO close encounters. Okay. When Shalva's Vimana became invisible, it was still physically present, and sounds emanating from it could be heard. There are a number of UFO accounts that also have this feature. Also, interesting note that about that in ancient Vedic times, so the technology was highly developed, even from the modern viewpoint. Bows and arrows used by the defenders of Dwarka were not on a primitive or medieval level of technology. The bow was used as a launching device for many different kinds of arrows. These arrows are often described as a blazing or sun-like, and in this case, they were endowed with some kind of guidance systems that enabled them to find their targets by sound. Yes, like now in Ukraine, we're finding among some terrible weapons driven by electronics, and but even in Vedic times, the technology was even more developed. Yes, and the science of manipulating with this weapon was not on a gross mechanical level, but mostly on a subtle level. So clearly, technological development does not have to be linear, so that all forms of technology higher than our own are further developments of the kind of technology that we have now. This is an important note by Sadaputa Prabhu. Okay. Also, in connection with this, about Nivata Kavachas, this Sadaputa Prabhu quotes one author, I'm not sure I'm correctly pronouncing this Dutch name, Buchanan, Van Buchanan, in the introduction to his translation of the Mahabharata. Here we have an account of a hero who took these visiting astronauts for what they were, intruders and enemies. The aerial city is nothing but an armed camp with flamethrowers and thundering cannon, no doubt a spaceship. The name of the demons is also revealing. They were Nivata Kavachas, clad in airtight armor, which can hardly be anything but spacesuits. It is heartening to know that sometime in the hoary past, a man stood up and destroyed the spaceship and aborted its mission with a bow and arrow. Maybe bow, I'm not sure, maybe bow. The Nivata Kavachas are a subgroup of the Danavas. This remark of already by Sadaputa Prabhu. The word Nivata means no air and Kavacha means armor. Perhaps this does refer to spacesuits. Okay. Also, some episodes concerning the levitation or Lagima Siddhi in Vedic literature. It is said that the yogis can acquire the power of Lagima Siddhi. A description of how this can be done is given by Krishna in the 11th canto of the Bhagavata Purana. Krishna says how one can achieve this Lagima Siddhi, the power of weightlessness. Krishna says, I exist within everything, and I am therefore the essence of the atomic constituents of material elements. By attaching his mind to me in this form, the yogi may achieve the perfection called lagima, by which he realizes the subtle atomic substance of time. So very mysterious definition. So the idea of atomic particles, space and time is very highly related in the Vedic literature, in particular in Srimad Bhagavatam. So very interesting definition. But in fact, all mystic powers, as Krishna explains further in the 11th canto, are acquired by some kind of meditation upon him or his energies. So all mystic powers can be acquired only by meditation on Krishna himself, or maybe some his avatars, or some his energies. This is the way how to attain such mystic powers like Lagima in this case. Maybe 2 or 3 more. Disappearance and sudden, maybe disappearance and reappearance. Episode with Vyasadeva and his mother Satyavati. Vyasadeva says to his mother, Mother, if you need me, just set your mind on me, and I shall appear before you. What says Sadaputa Prabhu, the telepathic communication between Vyasa and his mother is also a standard feature of Vedic accounts. And there are many accounts in the UFO literature of beings who abruptly appear or disappear and communicate in telepathic way. One more story about Usha and Aniruddha. Bodily travel through matter and space. Usha Aniruddha. Basically, this concerns how what was her name? Chitralekha kidnapped Aniruddha to take him to Usha. And in the case of what says Siddhartha Prabhu, in the case of Chitralekha and Aniruddha, or in the case of Vyasa in the preceding section, it is clear that travel was accomplished by the direct potency of the individuals involved. Chitralekha was able not only to move her own body through matter, but she was also able to carry along the sleeping body of Aniruddha. This may be a parallel to the UFO accounts in which a person is carried through the solid wall by a humanoid being, of which we have many reported stories. So moving through the gross physical impediments or obstacles, such as solid walls, for example. Interesting also quote, teleportation of matter probably cannot be done by mechanisms obeying the known laws of physics, but it is perfectly possible that there exist principles is over poltergeist cases where objects known to have been in another place are seen to appear suddenly in midair and follow strange trajectories. This phenomenon may also be related to Vedic cities such as Prapti and Manojava, which we have already discussed. Okay, and also one story: abduction of Arjuna by Ulupi and abduction of Duryodhana. So, which included the travel to so-called, I'm not sure I pronounce it correctly, neither or lower worlds, Bilasvarga. Bilasvarga is out there in the heavens, but at the same time it can be reached through mystical travel by entering into the earth. So Bilasvarga is called like underground heavenly planets or something like this, underground or under-terrestrial, something like this. And they can be reached through mystical travel by entering into the earth. Maybe this is the final one. Also induced paralysis and long-distance hypnosis. Ooh. This is a common feature of many UFO abduction reports is that the person being abducted is sometimes somehow paralyzed by his or her captors. By this perfection, one can bring anyone under his control. This is this again quote from, I believe, from the 11th canto. By this perfection, so this is also a mystic power of Vashita. By this perfection, one can bring anyone under his control. This is a kind of hypnotism which is almost irresistible. Sometimes it is found that a yogi who may have attained a little perfection in this Vashita mystic power comes out among the people and speaks all sorts of nonsense, controls their minds, exploits them, takes their money, and then goes away. This is Vashita mystic power. I could not help but to mention one, this was a novel, but Ivan Yefremov was a Soviet writer in the 60s. He wrote the novel Razor's Edge. It wasn't at all typical to Soviet literature at that time, but the hero of this book was a Soviet doctor, medical doctor, and he was very much engaged in the study of hypnosis. He also traveled to India, where he had encounters with local yogis, transcendentalists, Mayavadi philosophers, So it was very quite interesting. It was, I just wanted to mention it. It's not mentioned by Sadaputa Prabhu, but I found this like some parallel. So this idea from Vedic literature, it's like we say it in local language, like the idea is flying in the air. So it's described in Vedic literature, and maybe, as Sadaputa Prabhu says at the beginning of the chapter, it influenced the modern UFO stories which we hear now in these days, or etc. Okay. And there is some evidence that even ordinary hypnosis can act at a distance. This could have important implications regarding the attainability of the Vashita Siddhi by ordinary people, and it may also shed light on the nature of mind control and induce paralysis in UFO cases. Also, I am sorry for my nostalgia today for Soviet bite, but in late 80s, the Uri Geller, I don't know, in America, did you know Uri Geller? Yes, he was a famous, I don't know, from nowadays, he's seen as a cheater or a hero. I'm not sure. I did not track his life afterwards, but many accounts were reported when we started the broken clock and watches moving through the mental control through the television channel. I don't know how it was possible, but many accounts were reported, and so many cheaters then appeared on our in our territory, which were making hypnosis through television, etc. Were curing millions of people on the stadiums, etc. But later there were many reports about that this was just a fake. Okay, but nevertheless, this is also one of the possible parallels. No, this should be final maybe. And also, Sadaputa Prabhu tells about the parallel where in Vedic literature we find reports about taking illusory bodily forms and so-called Oz factor. So, like in stories when Sita was kidnapped by Ravana, beholding that monstrous apparition, the leaves of the trees ceased to move, the wind grew still, and the turbulent course of the river Godavari subsided. Ravana, however, profiting by Rama's absence, drew near to Sita in the guise of a monk of venerable appearance, while she was overcome with grief on account of her lord. So the trees stopped any movement, the wind stopped movements, which caused the trees to move. So there was complete silence. The life stopped when Ravana was trying to life around, almost like stopped when Ravana was kidnapping Sita, the complete silence. And this is reported also in the UFO accounts as so-called Oz factor. And also just before it, I must mention that Marichi demon, he took the guise of a deer, and Sita asked Lord Ramachandra to catch the deer and bring him to her. So this is also one of the mystic powers to ability to assume different shapes, different bodily forms of humans, beings, etc. Yes, and this is also what is reported in the UFO literature. Let's make some conclusions. So again, what, as I formulated for myself, the main thesis of the sixth chapter, many features of the modern UFO phenomenon can be seen in Vedic accounts of encounters between humans and members of other human-like races. Okay, this was a short review, wonderful chapter number 6 by genius author with the unprecedented depth of thought, of insight of Richard Thompson. Thank you very much for your patience and kind attentions. If you have any corrections, suggestions, please, I'll be happy to hear and maybe comment something. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dweja, for giving that very interesting talk. It was the first chapter in part 2, correct? Where Sariputta is switching from just describing UFO accounts to then starting in on the parallels. So
Yes,
I'm
yes.
really looking forward to that. I had a couple of questions. One is about maybe a third of the way through or a quarter of the way through your talk, there was an image you had on one of your slides that had a large flying saucer hovering over the Pentagon. And I didn't hear you, if you said anything about it, I didn't hear, yeah, that one. Whoa. That, yeah. Did you say anything about that? I was really intrigued by that image, but I didn't know what it was
Not
about.
exactly. I believe I will not track where I took it. Found it somewhere on the web.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm sorry. I need to it's my my drawback that I do not track. I do not record the references from where I took this image.
Okay.
I believe in some history was connected with it, but I cannot reproduce it right now.
Okay. What were you trying to illustrate by that? Was there some what you were trying to illustrate with that? Because
Just that
something about motherships, and that's why it caught my attention.
maybe, but motherships,
Yeah.
yes, motherships, they're described in detail in the next chapter.
Oh,
And
okay. So maybe it was just a passing
I
reference.
did not dive in it yet.
Okay.
Fortunately, I cannot give the details.
Okay. The other question I had, which is something that's been on my mind a lot, and you were talking about these different beings from the subterranean heavenly planets, but referring to them as more advanced. And it certainly does seem that way. It seems they're more advanced because they have all these mystic powers and they can do all kinds of things that we can't. And we also see a similar feature in some of the humanoids that live in Bhuvarloka, like the Rakshasas and the Yakshasas and those kinds of things. But they don't seem to be higher, and yet they seem to be more advanced. So I'm just, trying to, in my mind, to understand. We always think that by going up, in this hierarchy, that so that the entities in the subterranean heavenly planets should be the least advanced or the most primitive. And then as you go up in the hierarchy, you get more and more advanced, but it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems like there's more advanced beings living in the subterranean worlds, and then there's some, like the Rakshasas, they seem to be almost evil, right? Evil-minded, and yet have more power than us. So I don't know if you have anything to say on that issue. It's something that's always confused me a little bit in these accounts.
Well, yes, it's an interesting question. My understanding is that this hierarchy of planets is not so linear in the sense of increasing of sattva. It's not so linear. It's not always. The sattva basically increases when we go upwards, but it's not always the case. Maybe these Bhutas, or how do Rakshasas who live in Bhuvarloka, as far as I understand, they possess many mystical powers, and in this case, they could be considered more advanced. I remember in 2019, I asked, it was a question which I could not find answer to. Just in Janesville, when we were going to the lunch, I asked Radha Mohan Prabhu, who just raised his hand, how can we understand that such very highly developed civilizations are found in the lower levels of the universe, for example, and otherwise. And Radha Mohan Prabhu said that even the demonic species, they must possess some level of sattva, of course, so that high technological progress could be present. So sattva is also present at the lower planetary systems, and I believe that Rajas and Tamas are also present in some higher systems, for example, like in Warlock as well. It's my understanding. Also, we find, for example, Pitriloka, which is said sometimes to be a heavenly planet at the bottom of the universe, which is also like kind of suggestions that this hierarchy of 14 planetary systems is not always linear in the sense of developing sattva. I don't know if I answered this question, but I try to share my limited understanding of the subject.
It helped a lot. Yes, yes. So I think that because we see in the heavenly planets symptoms of the modes of passion and ignorance for sure in the stories from the Vedas. So that would explain, though, there's a predominance of, or a larger portion of goodness, but subject sometimes to ignorance and passion. And maybe that's why devotees aren't so keen to go to the higher planetary systems, because there's always that little bit, it's not Visuddhisattva, it's that little bit, and a tiny little bit of ignorance and passion, I guess, can go a long ways.
Yes, even here on the earth, we have some places which are considered like celestial. For example, in our view of our local view, for example, Florida or Hawaii is like a completely celestial place. People in their dreams, they want to be there. I too. But of course, different also, I understand that different also gunas can be met at in these places also, not only sattva and heavenly pleasures.
True.
There's a hand raised.
Okay, Radha Mohan, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I mean, my approach and my understanding of the vertical aspect of the Vedic universe, higher, middle, lower, and subterranean, and so forth, is based. It's not just about how much structured Jung there is. It's about piety, closeness to God. I'll give you a good example of this. Let's say, for example, I don't know. Let's say the Native Americans before they were invaded by the Europeans, for example, just something close to home for you guys, right? Spiritually, they're probably superior to what's going on in Manhattan at the moment, right? But Manhattan would appear to be more advanced in a material way. So, but material advancement and the ability to build buildings and spaceships and exploring space or whatever it is not always parallel with the spiritual welfare of the inhabitants of that particular realm. Sometimes the whole point of simple living, high thinking is actually quite fundamental to our philosophy. So the idea of building vimanas has nothing to do with spiritual advancement, and this is proven for the fact of the existence and the gradation, let's say, of the subterranean planets, where spiritually they're actually inferior to the Earth. Materially, they may have tinges of Satyagun, or at least they may be well organized. Just because something is well organized, or they have a well-organized society and an advanced society, whether materially or subtly, is not at all related to the spirituality of that society. And you can, like I mentioned before, you can compare that with modern society, with, let's say, for example, a more of a native tribe, which may appear to be primitive, but actually they may have more principles than the average, let's say, city dweller. So similarly, we might find in some of these subterranean planets that, free from disease and all kinds of things, but actually we would be feeling empty and devoid of something, quite having living there for some time. I hope that's kind of adds a new dimension to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Radha Mohan.
Anyone else have a question? Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll have another talk in 2 weeks. This will be on Saturday, May 11th. And there's going to be a presentation on Parallels Chapter 7, The Story of Vimanas, by Richard Cole, which is Radha Mohan. So Richard graduated from Manchester University in 1992 and is currently the communications officer at Bhaktivedanta Manor near London, where he specializes in media, public relations, interfaith, and drama. He also produces the popular YouTube channel called Vedic Science and History, and he has been a BHS member since 2019. So please join us in 2 weeks, May 11th, for the presentation on Chapter 7. And I believe there will also be a lecture next Saturday, which would be what date next Saturday? Someone have it off the top of their head?
May 4th.
May 4th by Jutta Karma. I'm not sure exactly what the name of his. He's doing several chapters at a time in his series, and that I believe is at 2 p.m. on Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, thank you all very much, and see you in a few weeks. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.